This is Mile High Sports.
Day 2 of Denver Broncos training camp is in the books. It was a cloudy day, Zach, and I tell you what, it was nice because
I ain't complaining.
I got burned. I got toasted. Even though I put on sunscreen. Sunscreen apparently does not work for me. But you know what? It was nice, cool weather. The Broncos offense got things going a little bit more so than they did on day 1. Still no pads until next week. But some good competition going all across the board. Welcome into the Broncos Blitz here on Mile High Sports. I'm Cody Roark, joined alongside by Zach Segars. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos here, milehighsports.com. Zach, like I said, a fun day at practice. You know,
Definitely.
I think players came out of the door of the locker room like, hey, this feels nice. And certainly so. It was great for us because we didn't have to worry about the scorching sun. But competition is on fire here for this Broncos team. A lot of changes. We'll break it all down on today's show. First off, you know, initially your thoughts on day 2.
Yeah, another good day of practice. I thought it was very special teams heavy. That's something that stood out to me. Definitely more than the first day. And we did see special teams work on the first day, but it seemed like first day kind of had this rotation of positional drill, scrimmage, positional drill, scrimmage. And this was almost positional drills, special teams, scrimmage, special teams, scrimmage. Like there was a lot of special teams mixed in. Even the positional drills I was seeing them do, they were breaking up into like gunner rolls and up men rolls and everyone running their own special teams position drill. So that's what really stood out to me today.
They took care of some PAT field goal stuff early on in practice during defensive individual period, but then you go to the installation period after the first set of scrimmage when the Broncos offense against the defense, all first team, second team, third team guys. Then they switched to punt return. It was more so punt return install, as Zach was alluding to. There was a multitude of guys back there, though, to return. Kendall Hinton was back there, Montreal Washington, Kaden Davis, Trey Quinn, and there was also another guy escaping my name right at the top of my head. Those were the main guys.
I'm blanking it too. Did Tyree get any work back
Tyree
there?
did not. He was mainly a gunner on the punt side. So those are the 4 main rotational guys here for the
Tyreek
Broncos.
McAllister.
Yeah, there we go. 39. Number 39 was the guy. So he was back there, but it was more so just setting it up on punt return for Dwayne Stooks, special teams coordinator, to get guys. They're going to simulate the punt. The punters actually didn't punt. Corliss Waitman and Sam Martin didn't actually kick any balls. They used the jugs machine to get the ball up. They simulated it. They had the returner field it, and then the returner would run up to the field a little bit, maybe about 5 to 10 yards, and would pause. And then Coach Stooks would blow the whistle. And then everybody else, from the interior guys to the guys who were covering the gunners, would then lead their assignment, whether it's a block left, a middle return, or even a right side return. They did a really good job on that. It was attention to detail there in terms of just being able to make sure guys are doing what they're working on during those special teams individual periods. So, really a good sign there. We'll see things kind of escalate a little bit once the pads come on next week. The Broncos ramping up the physical activity, and then we'll probably see a little bit more live fire when it comes to kick return, punt return. But realistically speaking, it looks like Montreal Washington is the main guy that they want returning punts and kicks this year.
And with good reason. He has exploded off the field, in my opinion, these first 2 days. Just has been so impressive. Doing great work in the pass game with, that second team unit as a receiver. But as a return man, I think he's been head and shoulders the best one out there. Kaden Davis, I think, deserves a mention too. Very springy. Being the first one out
every
for
day.
practice.
2 days in a row.
Back-to-back days. We'll see how long he can hold that belt for. But he's one I'd definitely be circling. And it seems like there's even hype building around Trey Quinn, even if he, I don't know, is maybe the least exciting of that threesome.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's really going to bode for the preseason. Who's going to get a practice squad spot? Because really, that's it. The Broncos can have 16 players on the practice squad this upcoming season. I love that the NFL has carried that over because it allows you to stash guys and further their development. As we all know, the NFL needs a developmental league. That's another subject for another day. But, Kaden Davis could be that springy guy. I mean, it almost kind of reminds me of a little bit of a River Craycraft a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I think he's got a little more burst to him than River, but to be fair, I wasn't watching a ton of River in camp.
We said it yesterday. One of the things that we saw, especially with the returners yesterday, not on day 2, on day 1, was just that they're so light on their feet. Like Montreal was running up the sideline towards where we were standing, and the moment he was getting closer, you couldn't even hear him. You couldn't hear his footsteps, and then when he plants his foot in the dirt, he can change direction really, really quickly. So he stands out a little bit to me.
The movement really stands out. One thing I wanted to highlight, he had a play doing that punt return drill you were kind of talking about where he got it and he ran like a parabola around this mound of Broncos, and it was his blockers and the people coming to tackle him. and he just like ran a circle around them before they had a chance to react. And I'm talking a wide circle, like he ran 10 yards sideways and then 20 yards upfield before they had a chance to beat him to the edge or anything. It was, I was on air live with Anilo, and we both just kind of like our jaws hit the floor and we're like, whoa, that was different. He is, I hope it translates once we start getting full contact out there, but man, the early returns are promising.
Well, let's get to some of our observations here on day 2 of Broncos camp here on the Broncos Blitz. One thing, that stood out to me just watching, I was watching the offensive line. Noticeably enough today, the first team offensive line, Garrett Bowles left tackle, you had Dalton Reisner at left guard, you had Cushenberry at center, but you had Netani Muti at right guard, and then Calvin Anderson at the right tackle. So yesterday on day 1, we saw a lot of Netani Muti working some left and right, but he was primarily working right today, and then Quinn Minor's kind of taking the backseat. I don't know if they're just trying to get him reps at both spots, or, does this mean, is there anything going on with Quinn? Did Quinn, was he banged up a little bit? We didn't get any clarification on that, but he worked in eventually towards the end on that final part of the scrimmage.
Yeah, I think that was a really good observation. You saw Hackett asked about that actually during his press conference, and I think it's something to monitor. But to me, and I think Moody rather will push for a starting job, but I think that's probably going to be pushing Reisner more than pushing Miners. I think Miners is maybe already cemented as the second best player on this offensive line. I'd be really surprised if they took him off the field, barring an injury or something like that, as you alluded to. Yeah, I think it's just helpful. Get Moody those reps on both sides, because if he ends up losing that competition to Reisner or whoever the left guard is going to be, maybe it's Turner kicking inside or something, he's going to be that next man up. And whether that injury happens at right guard or left guard, he's going to be expected to step in and perform.
He looks good, especially, on pull plays. But,
Absolutely.
as we've talked about, it's really hard to evaluate offensive line, defensive line, edge rushers from the standpoint that they have to engage. There's no actual physical contact because the pads are not yet on for them. But when we talk about first steps, looking at Baron Browning and Nick Bonito today, they looked very impressive with the second team
juice
defense.
is impressive there.
Bradley Chubb, once again, Malik Reed had a couple of pressures on Russ once again. I thought they did a really good job forcing some throwaways.
Aaron Patrick at the end, where they take their little guys who didn't get reps
To the side
section.
field.
Yep. To
Yep.
the side field. He was a man possessed, had one really nice rep where he just totally stood up the edge on a pitch play, had nowhere for it to go. And the play right before that, he was unblocked and sacked Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson scrambled because you're not really going to sack the quarterback out here. But yeah, Aaron Patrick was, I didn't catch who the lineman he was going up against was, but just demolishing him. And then McTelvin Najim, another guy kind of on that defensive line. Tough to analyze that part, but he had some really nice flash plays, including one that was actually a completion from the offense in the scrimmage period. But you saw Johnson working through his progressions on the right side, and he went to set and throw right, and McTelvin jumped up, leaped over the offensive lineman, got his hands up high, and Johnson had to reset, look back to the left, and ended up finding a guy on that left side. But that was no fault of McTelvin Najim. Really impressive rep from him there.
There was one rep from Draymond Jones where he shot inside really, really quickly inside the offensive tackle. I think he was working on Garrett Bowles, and he just had an impressive play. He slanted inside, got skinny in between Dalton Reisner and Garrett Bowles, stood there. The running back was coming to his side, and the running back had to cut back where help was. It would have been a tackle for a loss. Draymond looks fierce. He looks fast. He's physical. He did catch up with Mile High Sports' Eric Goodman. You can check that out on the afternoon drive, Mile High Sports Radio, here a little bit later on today. But that was something that stood out to me. Draymond was good. But then let's focus really on the offensive side of the ball, because really the defense, as expected, they have a majority of their guys back. They were flying around. They were making plays. It's very competitive. I talked with Justin Simmons after practice. He said just the level of competition that they're getting between the offense and the defense, it's going to prepare them for when they face some tough teams, some tough receiver matchups. So let's focus on Jerry Jeudy a little bit. Now, some of the things a lot of people are concerned about drops, he's had a couple of them, but he responded in a really nice way. There was one play where he was coming across from the right side to the left, and Russell Wilson threaded a perfect pass to Jerry Jeudy about 25, 28 yards downfield for a completion. And
turned upfield for a score too.
I say he responded in a pretty significant way, in a good way. We haven't seen any big time wow plays by either side. You had a couple takeaways yesterday, some passes defense, but I think everyone's always focused on the deep long ball. Remember last year in the quarterback competition, who threw the deep ball and who completed the big touchdown passes? That was really the talk. We've just seen the Broncos offense really just try to focus on, I think, the little parts of their installation and then acclimating it across the middle of the field. they're going to open it up eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen a decent amount of deep work, those rainbow arcs from Wilson to really all the receivers consistently get cheers from the crowd. And there's been a good bit of that. But yeah, to your point, they're focusing more on installing the nitty gritty stuff of this offense. And I'm glad you highlighted that Jeudy point, because Simmons, when you were talking with him, highlighted Jeudy as this is the guy as DBs we're highlighting, and we're having to go, where's Jerry Jeudy on every play, because he's so good at creating separation. He can be used in so many ways, and he's being used in so many ways by this offense. So even despite the drops, and I think they're worth noting because we'd all rather Jerry Jeudy not be dropping the football. But we're talking about 2 or 3 drops through 2 days of training camp practice. I really don't think it's that big a deal, especially to the level it's been blown up by some.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, anytime at practice, you're going to see like someone tweet Jerry Jeudy dropped this pass. Broncos country is going to come out in droves about that and highlight it. It's not something, in my opinion, I'm worried about,
it's because old news. It's old news. One of the lowest drop rates in the NFL last year.
Yeah, one drop, folks.
If we're going to still be hung up on having one of the highest drop rates in 2020, it seems to me like we should still give, I don't know, some love to having one of the lowest. Like, let's focus on both extremes here. I don't know.
Well, like I said, it's low hanging fruit. People see it, they're like, okay, there, bam. And a lot of people want to label Jerry Jeudy as a bust, which I think is not fair at this point. I think we're really going to see him thrive in this role. It's going to happen. Players are going to drop passes. It happens at times, but it's also practice. Like, Russ is going to throw interceptions at times in practice. Should we be freaking out about it? I don't think so. I think that's something we commonly see people do because it's the easy thing. It gets the reaction. It gets the hot take stuff coming out, and it's just football. That's really what it is.
And to me, the drops with Jeudy, I think specifically, have so frequently been mental. You see it. I think even you can see the drop he did today on Zach Stevens at DNVR's feed. He has a clip of it, and you can see he's like just turning up field before he's fully secured the ball. It's just this mental thing, and it is a hurdle he's going to have to get over. But that's what I'm watching for the rest of practice. How does he rebound from this? And that great play that Cody and I were just highlighting, 2 minutes ago, happened a handful of minutes after that drop. So that's what you want to see. Does it compound and build and build and build like that Chargers game 2 years ago? Then I'm going to be a little more concerned. Like, oh, can he get out of his own head? The way he's rebounded, I think both days, I don't know, it is promising.
Well, Calvin Anderson, I thought, had some good reps one-on-one on the outside with Bradley Chubb, Malik Reed from time to time. I thought he did a really good job, especially with his kick step. He doesn't give a lot of ground. Like when a pass rusher is coming outside, he does a good job staying laterally and moving with that, making contact with his outside hand and then shuffling. And then if a guy gets back inside, he does really good at putting that other foot forward, taking his inside hand and maneuvering with it. I've been very impressed with Calvin Anderson so far. Now, granted, like we've said, pads have to come on. That's when you really get to evaluate stuff. But, speaking of Jerry Jeudy, there was one play, and it could be arguably the defensive play of the day here. Russell Wilson did a play action fake, and Jerry Jeudy was going deep across the field. He throws a deep ball to him, almost kind of similar to the one play where he had caught it, but this one was a little bit of a deeper level there. You have Justin Simmons underneath playing on Judy's hip, and you have Kareem Jackson over the top. Literally, Justin comes in, gets his hand on it, knocks it away. Unbelievable play by Simmons. But, I mean, honestly, it was in the perfect trajectory. If Jerry Jeudy has any separation from the DB, like Justin did a good job with his leverage to be able to get over the top of the route. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, that's going to be a touchdown most of the time. That was a great play by Justin Simmons.
Yeah, and just, man, the talent. There were a couple reps like that, and I imagine we'll get to the other
one that ended the day.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in a second. But man, it's so fun to watch. Just like, and I know we're analyzing this, and here's what you need to know and everything. But just as like someone who loves football, seeing talents like Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy and Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson go up against each other, good versus good, hard competition, which Hackett is really underlined and highlighted as something that's important to him. It's a real treat for us that get to view it, because you get a play like that one and just multiple reps where it's like Russ did a great job delivering a pass. The receiver played it right, but just the defender made a play that was just to the nth degree better.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, let's talk about the play that ended practice today. The Broncos offense, first team O versus first team D. There was a great rep. It featured Cortland Sutton on the left side of the offensive formation. Patrick Surtain lined up against him in coverage, and it was a one-on-one. It was kind of a deep ball, a little bit kind of at the middle part of the field. Russ threw a very good pass there. Hits Cortland in the hands. Cortland goes up for it. It's in both Cortland Sutton's hands and Patrick Surtain's hands.
He nearly mussed Surtain.
But then Surtain knocks it out last second. Like, that was a great rep. And man, I tell you what, like it just gives me more confidence because week 1, guess who's coming? Guess who Denver has to go play? DK Metcalf. Cortland Sutton, like, DK's got bigger size and like more girth to him, but it's like, man, that's a good test for Patrick Surtain to work against Cortland every day in that size and Tim Patrick. I mean, I think it's going to give him a little bit of headway when he has to face a guy like DK week 1. If, like I said, the contract thing kind of comes in, but that probably will.
And here's the thing, Geno and Locke aren't going to be perfectly placing that ball like the way Russ did on that rep. It was like it wasn't in the end zone, but it was almost like a fade where Russ just threw up the jump ball and bet on Sutton to go get it. And to Sutton's credit, and it's part of why I'm such a big believer in Sutton's bounce back this year, he nearly mussed Patrick Surtain. Like, Patrick Surtain ultimately won the rep, but Sutton did a great job elevating, reaching over Surtain, and had 2 hands on the ball, had not possession, but just, I don't know, like
came down with
the
it,
border of possession. And as it was coming down at the end of the play, Surtain just knocked it out. So it was like a perfect play from Surtain, near perfect from Sutton, near perfect from Russ. And it was just, all were so good. It went down to the guy who literally played it perfect. And I think that has to get you excited to what you were saying about Surtain, about Wilson's and his accuracy and whatnot, but also Sutton, who I really think we're going to see him back to 2019 form.
He looks so dang good right now. Just one thing I noted on Twitter, just watching it, just the way he's running his routes. He throttles down. Like, he's got his quickness back. He's got his burst.
Yes.
And it looks like his route running is a little bit more polished than we've ever seen it, Ben. And I think that's a huge thing to watch this year.
I love that point. And I fully agree. I think, and the proof is in the pudding too. Last year, there was all the whispers and smoke about, man, Sutton doesn't look right. This doesn't, quite feel, blah, blah, blah. And everyone was worried. I haven't seen a lick of that on Twitter, and I bet you haven't either. No. There's none of it. And with good reason, because Sutton just looks like himself. And it's so exciting because we saw Sutton perform with, I think Locke's aggressive nature kind of plays to his strengths, but with quarterbacks that couldn't fully maximize what he does. When you look at Wilson's career and his play style and what he's consistently done so well, trusting his receivers and throwing up beautiful deep balls, I am really excited for what I think is going to be a Courtland Sutton emergence.
It's going to be very fun to watch all throughout Broncos training camp. We'll be there day 3 tomorrow at the UC Health Training Center. Early bird gets the worm, which was really cool because I was there with you this morning.
That's a good post.
There was a bird that had a worm in his mouth. I was like, this is a perfect photo opportunity to post it. The early bird did get the worm. He did take advantage of that, but we'll provide coverage of day 3 of Broncos camp tomorrow here on the YouTube channel, Mile High Sports. Make sure you hit that like button, comment for the algorithm, and also hit that bell notification so you never miss out on all the Broncos coverage we provide over here, Mile High Sports and milehighsports.com. Zach Segars and myself, we have you covered with written content, in-depth interviews, analysis, and more all year long here covering your favorite team, the Denver Broncos. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode, Broncos Blitz.